The year is 2011, and after 10 years of searching, the world's most wanted man has finally been found. But just how did the US military track down Osama bin Laden, and where was he hiding all this time? And what went down during the raid that left him dead? This is the full story of how Osama bin Laden was killed, the secret mission that took out Al-Qaeda's leader once and for all. On May 2, 2011, at around 1 a.m., four Black Hawk helicopters were flying back and forth above a sprawling, heavily guarded compound located in the city of Abbottabad, Pakistan. These choppers were carrying members of the elite U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6, their mission to take down Osama bin Laden, the leader of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda and the mastermind behind the September 11th attacks. The raid that followed would become one of the most talked about operations in modern history. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the operation, let's rewind a bit and see exactly how the U.S. intelligence community got wind of bin Laden's whereabouts. For over a decade, the U.S. had been searching for the elusive terrorist who masterminded the September 11th attacks. The attacks, which left nearly 3,000 people dead and caused billions of dollars in damage, were the deadliest in U.S. history. It was no surprise that the American government would stop at nothing to bring bin Laden to justice. And in the years following the attacks, the U.S. spent millions upon millions of dollars developing increasingly sophisticated surveillance technologies in order to track him down. One such technology was the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, commonly known as drones. By the mid-2000s, the CIA began utilizing drones equipped with high-resolution cameras to monitor suspected terrorist hideouts in areas like Afghanistan and Pakistan. The drones allowed intelligence agencies to collect valuable intel without putting human assets at risk. In addition to drone surveillance, the U.S. relied on a variety of other intelligence-gathering methods. They included satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and informants on the ground. All of this information was then analyzed by a team of experts at the CIA who worked around the clock to put together the pieces of the puzzle and track down bin Laden, but it wasn't easy. Bin Laden was a ghost, seemingly disappearing off the face of the earth after the attacks. For years, the only concrete evidence of his survival were audio messages released sporadically to the media. The U.S. government believed he was hiding somewhere along the porous border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, an area known as the Tribal Belt. It was here that bin Laden could blend in with the local population and evade detection from prying eyes. However, in late 2010, something changed. A courier began making regular trips to and from a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. The U.S. intelligence community caught wind of this activity and began monitoring the courier. They discovered that he regularly traveled back and forth across the border, often carrying large amounts of cash. Further investigation revealed that the courier was using a fake identity and had close ties to senior members of Al-Qaeda. All of this information pointed to one conclusion. The courier was delivering messages and supplies to bin Laden, who was likely hiding in the Abbottabad compound. At this point, the CIA decided to take action. They deployed more resources to the area and began a massive surveillance operation. They gathered information about the compound and its inhabitants, including the fact that it was heavily fortified and surrounded by tall walls, which suggested that its owner had something to hide. Eventually, the CIA became so confident that bin Laden was living in the compound that they sent a team of elite snipers to the area to keep him under surveillance. The snipers observed the compound day and night, looking for any sign of movement. And it wasn't long before they spotted their target. By early 2011, the CIA was certain that they had found bin Laden. However, they didn't want to make a premature move that might alert him to their presence. So they decided to bide their time and wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. That opportunity would come on May 2, 2011. It was a Sunday night when the SEAL team was briefed on the mission. They were told that they had a 95% certainty that bin Laden was in the compound. The team was split into two groups, with one group taking on the main building and the other covering the outbuildings. Each member of the team was armed with a variety of weapons, including rifles, pistols, and grenades. Once the teams were in position, the helicopters began their assault. The first helicopter flew low over the compound, firing rockets and grenades at the walls to create an opening for the rest of the team, as the other helicopters provided cover. A group of SEALs rappelled down from the helicopters and made their way to the ground. They moved quickly and silently, taking cover behind bushes and trees as they approached the compound. As the raid was underway, a firefight broke out. The SEALs came under heavy fire from men inside the compound. But they returned fire, killing several of the occupants. In the ensuing chaos, one of the helicopters was hit and forced to make an emergency landing. Several SEALs on board were injured, but they were able to fight their way back to the main building. Meanwhile, the team that had entered the compound was closing in on bin Laden's location. They could hear him moving about inside the house, pacing back and forth and talking on the phone. The team moved through the rooms quickly and quietly, taking out anyone who resisted. Finally, they reached the third floor where they found bin Laden hiding in a bathroom. He was unarmed and wearing traditional Pakistani clothing. When the SEALs burst into the room, bin Laden was taken by surprise. He looked up from the floor where he had been kneeling and raised his hands in submission. A tense standoff ensued as the SEALs demanded that bin Laden surrender. But instead of complying, bin Laden began to resist. He fought back against the SEALs, trying to flee the room. In the struggle that followed, bin Laden was shot and killed. As soon as bin Laden was dead, the SEALs searched the compound for any other Al-Qaeda operatives. They found several men, women and children, but none of them were high-ranking members of Al-Qaeda. The raid was over. But there was still one important question that needed to be answered. What happened to bin Laden's body? According to reports, bin Laden's body was first taken to a secure location in Afghanistan, where it was positively identified using dental records. After that, it was flown to the United States for further analysis. There have been conflicting reports about what happened to bin Laden's remains after he was identified. Some reports indicate that his body was buried at sea, while others claim that it was buried in a cemetery in Virginia. However, the U.S. government has never officially disclosed what happened to bin Laden's remains. Now, why do you think the U.S. government chose to bury bin Laden at sea? One reason may be to prevent the site of his burial from becoming a shrine or pilgrimage site for extremists. By burying him at sea, the U.S. government ensured that his final resting place would not be known or accessible to the public. Another reason for the decision may have been to prevent bin Laden's body from being desecrated or stolen. There were fears that if bin Laden's body was recovered by another group, it could be paraded around as a trophy or used as a propaganda tool. By burying him at sea, the U.S. government reduced the risk of his body being desecrated or stolen. You know, throughout history, there have been numerous instances of high-profile individuals being buried in secret or at sea to protect their remains from those who may seek to harm or exploit them. For example, the remains of Russian revolutionary Leon Trotsky were also buried at sea in 1940 to prevent them from falling into the hands of the Nazis. Similarly, the remains of victims of the September 11th attacks were interred at a special memorial in New York City to ensure that they would be treated with respect and dignity. Overall, the decision to bury bin Laden at sea was likely a carefully considered one that took into account the unique circumstances surrounding his death and the potential risks associated with his burial. Whether he actually was buried at sea or not remains classified information. But what we do know is that this raid was a huge success for the United States and brought an end to the decade-long search for the world's most wanted man.